we've already talked a little bit about who Peter Zeihan is. If you guys don't know who he is, Peter Zeihan is an author. He's written like 4 or 5 books now. He's also a geopoliticist. He studies the way that commodities, wars, demographics all collide in order to kind of determine where the world is going. His very first book that he wrote that I ever was turned on to is called Accidental Superpower. He wrote it circa 2017, 2015, something like that. That's the book you need to go read, because if you go read it, it's like almost like he has a crystal ball of all the things that are playing out in the economy right now, which is why I give so much merit to what he talks about when he talks about it. And that's why this is important. This is him on the Joe Rogan podcast.
You're saying that China has 10 years to go.
At most.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we now know that they've lied about their population statistics, and they overcounted their population by over 100 million people, all of whom would have been born since the one-child policy was adopted.
So they're old.
So this is one of those places where they've got more people in their 60s and their 50s and their 40s and their 30s and their 20s.
Now, what was the logic behind the one child? Was it that they were overpopulating?
Mao was concerned that as the country was modernizing, the birth rate wasn't dropping fast enough, and that the young generation was literally going to eat the country alive. So they went through a breakneck urbanization program which destroyed the birth rate. At the same time, they penalized anyone who wanted to have kids. And both of those at the same time have generated the demographic collapse we're in now.
And the problem with that also was that they wanted male children.
Yeah, there's a cultural aspect to that too. And obviously, men can't have kids on their own.
You're
Despite
saying
what
that
they love
China has...
Despite what some of our people think out there.
But what about Petri dishes? Yeah. So what's interesting about this is if you sit and you listen to like Ray Dalio, he was touting China quite a bit, and Ray Dalio is a pretty sharp guy.
Yeah.
He has since changed his tune because I think he's finally woken up. He says there's still some things that are good to invest in China, but truthfully, they're in a world of hurt. And so I don't know if people understand how significant it is to have more older people than younger people, but the demand on the system to take care of older people is very challenging, especially when they're not contributing to society. You can't really tax them. They can't work. They don't really add value. They reach a stage in their life when they need to be cared for.
Yes.
And who does that? Who pays for that?
Well, I did a quick little search on this thing called the internet of what are the ramifications of a declining population in society, and took it to a little website called Wikipedia. And if you look here, they list 9 things that really are the impacts of a declining population. Now, I referenced this thinking about our own nation and the anti-children mentality that we have across 2-3 generations now. So look at this: decline in basic services and infrastructure. Shout out to Larry Fink. Rise in dependency ratio, which you just alluded to. Crisis in end-of-life care for the elderly. Difficulty in funding entitlement programs. Think of all of you who are championing for Social Security and everything else out there. Decline in military strength.
Interesting.
Decline in innovation. All you internet lovers out there, technology people. Strain on mental health. Deflation. And unemployment.
Yep.
And there
It's
are other
funny
things.
they would mention decline in military strength because they just released yesterday the reinstatement of the draft, right?
Yeah, the broadening of the selective service. Yeah.
Correct. 18 to 26-year-olds, or male and female, are on the docket now to be drafted, right? And that's because they've had a lack of people actually enrolling.
Yeah, and I think that the significance is the switch from it not being select or elective, it being a requirement to be a candidate for it. So,
which is also telling of what's going through the military's mind,
Correct.
right? Because every generational cycle, 100-year cycle, declining, every empire ends the same way. It ends in
war.
A war.
Yeah. Facts. Well, this is why one of the first things God said is go be fruitful and multiply.
Absolutely.
So God knows what he was talking about, guys. I know you might be questioning it.